October 1813. A Shawnee leader named Tecumseh dies in battle in southern Ontario, Canada. Most people have never heard of him, but his death at the Battle of the Thames determined whether America would expand westward to become a continental superpower or remain permanently contained east of the Appalachian Mountains. That one battle changed a nation's entire trajectory, yet it receives maybe a paragraph in most textbooks. This pattern repeats throughout history. The battles that fundamentally reshaped our world are often the ones we don't learn about. Some were forgotten simply because they didn't fit neat historical narratives. Others were deliberately suppressed because they revealed uncomfortable truths. Today, I'm showing you 7 conflicts that changed everything and then disappeared from collective memory. Let's start with the battle that made it possible for you to watch this video. Battle number 1. Talas River, 751 AD. The technology that built civilization. July 751. The Talas River in Central Asia, in what's now Kazakhstan. The Tang dynasty of China, one of history's most powerful empires, faces the expanding Abbasid Caliphate in a 5-day battle for control of Silk Road trade routes. The Abbasids win decisively. The Tang army retreats eastward. In most history books, this is a footnote, a minor border conflict in a remote location. But among the Chinese prisoners are skilled paper makers. For centuries, China had guarded paper manufacturing as a state secret. Paper was the foundation of their bureaucratic efficiency, their literary culture, their information infrastructure. It was their competitive advantage. The Abbasid Caliphate put those prisoners to work. Within decades, paper mills operated in Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo. By 1150, the technology had reached Europe through Islamic Spain. This is what made the modern world possible. Without affordable paper, there's no mass literacy, no widespread book distribution, no scientific revolution built on shared, documented knowledge, no printing press revolution. The entire intellectual foundation of modern civilization depends on the transmission of paper technology westward. The Battle of Talas River facilitated that transmission. So why don't we learn about it? Because it doesn't fit the standard Western narrative that civilization flowed primarily from Greece and Rome to Europe. It requires acknowledging that the Islamic Golden Age preserved classical knowledge, advanced it significantly, and transmitted crucial technologies westward, including the very technology that would later enable the European Renaissance. It's complicated, so it gets edited out. Battle number 2, the Thames, 1813, the death that shaped a continent. October 5, 1813, southern Ontario. The War of 1812 is going badly for the United States. British forces have burned Washington, D.C. The government is nearly bankrupt. New England states are discussing secession. America's only successes are in the Northwest Territory, modern Michigan and Ohio, where they're fighting British forces allied with a Native American confederation led by the Shawnee leader Tecumseh. Tecumseh's confederation is sophisticated, well-organized and effective. The British have promised that if they win, they'll create a permanent Native American nation between the United States and Canada, an indigenous buffer state that would contain US expansion west of the Appalachians. Think about that alternate history. America remains an Atlantic coastal power. No westward expansion. No California. No transcontinental nation. Completely different geopolitical trajectory. At the Battle of the Thames, American forces under William Henry Harrison pursue retreating British and native forces into the wilderness. During the fighting, Tecumseh is killed. His confederation immediately fractures. Without his leadership, the alliance collapses. The British abandon plans for a Native American buffer state. Within a year, the War of 1812 ends in stalemate, but the path westward is open. One battle, one leader's death, an entire continent's future rewritten. Why don't we learn about this? Because it requires acknowledging how sophisticated Native American political organization was and how close it came to permanently altering American expansion. It's easier to teach westward expansion as inevitable than to confront how contingent it actually was. Those battles changed history over decades and centuries, but what about a conflict that could have triggered nuclear war and was kept secret for 40 years? November 1950. American fighter pilots over Korea are shooting down Soviet MiG fighters flown by Soviet pilots. Both superpowers know it's happening. Neither will publicly acknowledge it. What happened next established the rules that may have prevented World War III. Battle number 3, Yalu River, 1950 to 1953. The Secret War. For 3 years during the Korean War, American and Soviet pilots fought a full-scale air war over northwestern Korea and the Yalu River border with China. US intelligence knew immediately. They had recordings of Russian voices on radio frequencies. Gun camera footage showed non-Asian faces in MiG cockpits. Reports confirmed entire Soviet air divisions had deployed. Historians now estimate over 5,000 direct combat engagements between American and Soviet aircraft from 1950 to 1953. So why didn't this trigger World War III? Because both superpowers made an unspoken agreement. Don't publicly acknowledge it. American pilots received strict orders never to pursue enemy aircraft across the Yalu into Chinese airspace. Soviet pilots were ordered to stay north of certain lines. When aircraft were shot down and pilots killed, bodies were quietly returned through back channels. Official casualty lists omitted the truth. Both governments maintained the fiction that Soviet forces weren't directly engaged. This remained classified until the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed. Only then could American pilots who'd been silenced for 40 years finally tell their stories. Why does this matter? Because it established a crucial precedent. Even at the height of Cold War tensions, the superpowers could make rational decisions to avoid nuclear escalation. Secret communication and mutual restraint could prevent catastrophe. This template, this proof that cooperation was possible, even during direct combat, would be critical during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the Able Archer war scare in 1983, and numerous other close calls. The Yalu River air battles weren't just forgotten history. They were deliberately hidden history that helped create the norms that prevented nuclear war. Battle number 4, Tumu Crisis, 1449. When institutions became more powerful than emperors, September 1st, 1449. Northern China, the Mongol leader Esen Taizi lures the Ming dynasty emperor into a trap at Tumu Fortress. The massive Chinese army, sources claim hundreds of thousands of soldiers, is destroyed. The emperor himself is captured alive. This should end the Ming dynasty. Throughout history, capturing an enemy's monarch meant victory. You ransomed them back for enormous concessions, or you forced their government to surrender. The Ming court does something unprecedented. They declare the emperor's capture irrelevant. They install his brother as the new emperor. They refuse all negotiations. They essentially tell the Mongols, "Keep him, we don't need him." For a year, the former emperor lives in Mongol captivity. The Mongols, unable to leverage him for any concessions, eventually release him without ransom, because he's become worthless as a bargaining chip. This decision shattered traditional Chinese political theory. The mandate of heaven held that the emperor was divinely necessary for legitimate rule. But the Ming court proved that institutions could be more important than individuals, that the state could transcend any single person. This principle would influence Chinese political philosophy for centuries. You can see its echo today in how the Chinese Communist Party operates. The party is eternal and paramount. Individual leaders are temporary and secondary. One captured emperor, one institutional decision. A fundamental shift in political philosophy. Why don't we learn about this? Primarily because Chinese history receives limited coverage in Western education, and this event challenges Western assumptions about how monarchical power worked. The battles we've covered changed technology, geography, nuclear doctrine, and political philosophy, but the next one changed the rules of warfare itself by crossing a line that can never be uncrossed. June 1763. Fort Pitt, in what's now Pittsburgh. British forces are surrounded during Pontiac's war. They're outnumbered, running low on supplies, desperate. And that's when British officers decided to try something that would become the first documented biological warfare in history. Battle number 5. Fort Pitt, 1763. The first biological warfare. In June 1763, Colonel Henry Bouquet wrote to General Jeffrey Amherst asking whether they should use smallpox against Native American forces besieging Fort Pitt. Amherst's response, dated July 16, 1763, is preserved in historical archives. You will do well to try to inoculate the Indians by means of blankets, as well as to try every other method that can serve to extirpate this execrable race. Captain Simeon Equier, commanding the fort, recorded in his journal that he gave blankets and a handkerchief from the fort's smallpox hospital to tribal representatives during negotiations, presenting them as gifts. A smallpox epidemic occurred among the besieging tribes in the following months. Historians debate the actual effectiveness. Smallpox was already endemic in the region, and transmission via contaminated fabric is less reliable than 18th century officers believed. But the intent is documented in their own correspondence. This represents the first clearly documented attempt at biological warfare in military history. Not in ancient times, not in medieval sieges, but in 1763, by British officers who wrote about it in official letters. Why isn't this prominently taught? Because it fundamentally complicates narratives about civilized versus savage warfare. It reveals that the modern laws of war, the Geneva Conventions, the Biological Weapons Convention, exist precisely because supposedly civilized armies proved they needed external constraints. Fort Pitt established a precedent. By World War I, chemical weapons were in widespread use. By World War II, every major power had biological weapons programs. The line was crossed in 1763. Everything after was a matter of scale and sophistication. Battle number 6. Nanchang Uprising, 1927. The failure that built modern China. August 1st, 1927. The city of Nanchang in central China, communist officers within the nationalist army launch a rebellion against the nationalist government. It fails completely within days. Most participants are killed or captured. By any military standard, it's a disaster. But one survivor is a young communist organizer named Mao Zedong, and the lesson he draws from Nanchang is fundamental. Communists need their own independent army, not just influence within someone else's military. August 1st, 1927 is still celebrated in China as the founding date of the People's Liberation Army. Not because they won, but because the defeat taught them what they needed to survive. 22 years later, that army would control all of mainland China. By 1964, they'd have nuclear weapons. Today, it's the world's largest military, backing the world's second largest economy and America's primary strategic competitor. The entire US-China relationship that dominates 21st century geopolitics traces directly to a failed three-day uprising in 1927. Western textbooks rarely cover this, usually mentioning it only briefly, if at all. But without Nanchang, there's no communist victory in the Chinese Civil War, no Korean War as we know it, no Vietnam War, no Nixon's opening to China, no economic rise that reshaped global manufacturing and trade. One small failed battle, entire world trajectory altered. Battle number 7, Palmyra, 272 AD. The warrior queen who challenged Rome. 272 AD. The Roman Empire is fragmenting under pressure from multiple frontiers. In the eastern desert, a woman named Zenobia rules the Palmyrene Empire. Not as regent for a son, not as a widow maintaining her husband's legacy, but as queen in her own right. Her empire stretches from modern Turkey to Egypt. She controls Rome's grain supply from Egypt. She mints coins bearing her image. She claims the title Augusta, Empress. Emperor Aurelian leads Roman legions east to restore control. What follows is a months-long campaign. Zenobia's forces use desert warfare tactics, ambush Roman supply lines, and fight an effective guerrilla war that frustrates the legions. She nearly succeeds. Eventually, Roman numerical superiority and logistics prevail. Palmyra falls. Zenobia is captured and, according to various historical accounts, either paraded through Rome before being granted a villa in exile or died before reaching the city. Roman historians couldn't ignore her. She'd been too successful, too prominent. So they reframed her as an exotic curiosity, the warrior queen of the East. Fascinating, but ultimately an aberration. For 1,700 years, that's how history remembered her. A footnote, an exotic side story. But consider the actual facts. A woman built an empire rivaling Rome's eastern provinces. She commanded armies effectively for 5 years. She controlled crucial trade routes. She negotiated with Persia as an equal power. She only lost because she was fighting the largest military power in the ancient world. And she nearly won anyway. That's not a footnote. That's a major historical figure who happened to be a woman, who challenged rather than supported Rome. Which is precisely why she gets minimal coverage in most curricula. How history chooses what to remember. So what connects these 7 battles? Talas River. Overlooked because it requires acknowledging that the Islamic Golden Age was essential to preserving and transmitting knowledge to the West. The Thames. Minimized because it means confronting how sophisticated Native American political organization was and how close it came to success. Yalu River. Classified to prevent escalation, then kept quiet because it complicated Cold War narratives of clear-cut opposition. Tumu Crisis. Ignored because Western curricula give limited attention to Chinese history, especially events that challenge assumptions about imperial power. Fort Pitt. Downplayed because it's a documented war crime that complicates narratives about colonial civilization. Nanchang. Overlooked because Western education rarely covers the Chinese Civil War in depth, especially communist perspectives. Palmyra. Minimized because Zenobia was a woman who challenged rather than supported Rome. These battles were forgotten or overlooked because they're complicated. They challenge simple narratives. They reveal uncomfortable truths. They require acknowledging that history is shaped by editorial choices, by what those in power decide is worth remembering. But here's what's changed. We now have access to primary sources, archaeological evidence, and academic research that wasn't available to previous generations. These stories don't have to stay forgotten. Recovering lost history. Every battle I've shown you today changed the world you live in. The paper you use exists because of Talas River. America's continental borders were determined at the Thames. Nuclear war was prevented partly because of lessons from the Yalu River. Modern Chinese political philosophy was shaped at Tumu. The laws of warfare exist because of atrocities like Fort Pitt. The US-China relationship stems from Nanchang. And we overlook powerful women in history like Zenobia at our own intellectual loss. These battles shaped everything: technology, borders, nuclear doctrine, political systems, laws of war, global power balance, and whose stories get told. History isn't a fixed set of facts. It's a constantly evolving conversation about what matters and why. And in the internet age, we can recover stories that were previously forgotten or suppressed. If this video changed how you think about history, subscribe. Next week, archaeological discoveries that were initially dismissed or suppressed, and how they eventually forced us to rewrite what we thought we knew. The past isn't dead. It's not even fully discovered yet,